Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. A bit of a rambling one today. I wasn't planning on uploading. I took my children to a water park. It was very fun. But we got some really interesting news that I wasn't expecting so quickly. Alright, so this video will have spoilers for the most recent Bad Batch episode, but as I talked about yesterday, these spoilers are pretty detached from what happens in the rest of the season, so let's move on. The end of the Bad Batch has this pretty crucial moment where we see Kaminoan scientist Nala Se brought to this mysterious and mountainous Imperial facility. And the interesting thing about this is that a lot of us made the connection to a very famous location in Star Wars Legends known as Mount Tantiss. Not only because it is apparently a secret base built into a mountain, but also because Mount Tantiss was very heavily associated with cloning. Perhaps, according to the lore, originally started off as a cloning facility and also being home to tens of thousands of Sparti cloning cylinders, which come into major use during the Thrawn campaign. So for those reasons, as I mentioned, a lot of us online made the connection. I actually went a little bit further, not to toot my own horn too much, and said that this is actually most likely Mount Tantiss. Not only a similar idea, but this will be the new canon version of Mount Tantiss with the same name, because Star Wars has been incorporating a lot of Legends elements recently. And wouldn't you know it, today Disney released a behind-the-scenes look at the Bad Batch season finale, and the Imperial base is actually named as Mount Tantiss on the planet Wayland. Now, I will note the Wayland here is spelt differently. There's an E instead of an A. That's not really important. This is also sort of behind the scenes art, so it could still be Wayland officially with an A, but either way, they've basically taken the exact same idea from Star Wars Legends and brought it into canon. I pointed out on Twitter yesterday, I believe this was after my video went live, that almost immediately after Wayland was invented for the Thrawn Trilogy, extra material, including the Thrawn Trilogy source book, kind of made up this extra lore that Mount Tantiss may have been started after a cloning facility was transplanted into the mountain, and that's almost literally what's happened here, so it's kind of cool to see that brought together. But that's not really what the video is about. Mount Tantiss is one aspect of what we'll be discussing today, but the general idea behind this video is my argument that Star Wars and Disney are pretty much making a new Thrawn trilogy, or a new Thrawn campaign. Too many things are lining up, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the Thrawn Trilogy, I'll give you guys a very brief, bare-bones explanation of what happened. If there's interest, I can do a whole dedicated video later, but basically, in the Thrawn Trilogy, the last Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is relatively unknown to the rest of the galaxy, as all the Grand Admirals are thought dead, emerges from the unknown regions and launches a guerrilla-style campaign against the New Republic with the help of a rogue Dark Jedi, or as we learn later, the clone of a Jedi known as Joruus C'baoth. The Thrawn campaign begins 9 years after the Battle of Yavin, that's 5 years after the Battle of Endor, as the New Republic has secured a relatively strong hold on the galaxy, with the Empire having devolved into infighting and there being no other really major Imperial remnant power at that moment. During Thrawn's campaign, he not only uses Joruus C'baoth to gain an advantage, but also steals Imperial technology from Mount Tantiss, the Emperor's personal storehouse. He captures a large portion of the Katana fleet, a lost fleet of Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers, and he uses cloning technology to help make up for a lack of soldiers. Thrawn's campaign would be incredibly successful, pushing the New Republic to its brink, but ultimately he would fall and his campaign would end at the Battle of Bilbringi. After his death, the Emperor in a clone body would return, first manipulating the galaxy from the shadows and causing a devastating civil war, before fully appearing with a fleet of unimaginable power, but eventually being destroyed, with his spirit specifically being taken down by a Jedi known as Impantagehos Brand. So I've kind of hinted at the fact that there's not only connections to the Thrawn campaign, but also Dark Empire, and I've covered the latter in a video before, before, let's talk about Thrawn though, and how close everything is in canon to the setup at least we got in Star Wars Legends. And I mean, first of all, we have the state of the galaxy and the time period. Wouldn't you know it, The Mandalorian, which alongside other shows is setting up a return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, is set in 9 ABY, the exact same year as the Thrawn campaign. The state of the galaxy is also fairly similar. There are Imperial holdouts, I'd say less so than Star Wars Legends. There's been less of a focus on warlords and whatnot, but the New Republic has pretty good control of everything. Grand Admiral Thrawn is missing and presumed by many to be dead. He's an unknown entity to the New Republic, as was the case in Star Wars Legends, but we've seen some hints at him still being alive. Besides the fact that it's obvious he's going to come back, we've seen that droid from his fleet in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. There's been rumors that he's been cast. I don't think it's really in doubt that he will be returning. Thrawn will also be returning with most likely an armada, but an armada that is significantly less powerful than that of the New Republic. And now we have Mount Tantiss in play, and I'll just say, things like this aren't a mistake. Star Wars has very clearly been planning out some big multimedia project around the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, so the dropping of Mount Tantiss, which is associated almost solely in Star Wars Legends with the Thrawn Trilogy, indicates that it's probably going to be a thing that is important. There's more though. I tweeted earlier, if only Thrawn had access to a wayward Jedi he could manipulate, almost a canon version of Jorah Sabaoth. The joke being that Thrawn does have access to a Jedi that he spent lots of time with and could have been corrupting in the unknown regions. Otherwise, a Jedi that Thrawn could try to clone at Mount Tantiss, which would actually be, I think, pretty appropriate. Jorah Sabaoth was discovered by Thrawn at Mount Tantiss, so I think it'd be appropriate if the new version of Sabaoth, if one does exist, also comes about in a somewhat similar way. So really everything is coming together. We've got the time period, we've got Wayland, we've got Thrawn making an imminent return. In the real world, probably we'll see Thrawn on screen in 2022, I would guess, perhaps 2023. We've got to focus on cloning and perhaps even cloning Force-sensitive beings, as we see with Grogu. And we've got a lot of in-universe time to work with here. I think you can get away with a fairly big Thrawn campaign. You can't get away, I don't think, with something like the Yuuzhan Vong War, with what we know in Star Wars canon, but thankfully Lucasfilm and Star Wars has been pretty tiptoey around the time between Episode 6 and Episode 7. I think the worst thing you'd be doing from a canon perspective by having a big Thrawn campaign at this point would be going against some of the material we got in books like Bloodline and Aftermath, which suggested a relatively peaceful period, but to be honest, who cares? Violate the canon if we get a Thrawn campaign and it's good. A lot of those books have bad ideas anyway. So yeah, and I do think it is telling that they've really avoided this period. We've seen books like Alphabet Squadron, which is really good, the whole trilogy, come in before the Thrawn campaign, that I'm assuming happens, but not a whole lot in that sort of middle time period. So there's definitely room to be left open there. I believe that it's very possible that Lucasfilm and Star Wars and Disney have had this big sort of MCU-style collaboration planned for a very long time, and I personally am excited for it. Those are just my kind of rambling thoughts, so I'm excited to hear what you guys think. Till next time, though, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.